Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. We have Janet Harvey presenting to us this evening. She's the author of an award-winning leadership and coaching book called Invite Change, Lessons from 2020, the Year of No Return. Well, I just think, Janet, you should add 2021 to that as well, but that will be for a later edition. Janet is the CEO of Invite Change, a coaching and human development organization that shapes a world where people love their life's work. As a visionary leader in the global professional coaching industry, Janet Harvey is an International Coaching Federation Master Certified Coach and accredited educator who has engaged adults, teams, and global enterprises for nearly 30 years to invite change that sustains well-being and excellence. Being better humans together requires claiming a true self first and then choosing to live inside out as we transform, evolve, and become resilient. As Janet shares, coaching in its many forms has in its roots the effect of awakening consciousness and doing so in a highly accelerated fashion that sustains. Janet uses her executive and entrepreneurial experience to cultivate leaders in sustainable excellence through generative wholeness. This is her proprietary generative coaching and learning process for people, processes, and systems. Her colleagues, audiences, and clients regard her as bold, curious, provocative, articulate, and compassionate human being. I would add fun as well. Janet has served as a global board leader for ICF, as a director from 2009 to 2013, as past president in 2012, as chair of the foundation of ICF 2013-2017, and more recently, as treasurer of the ICF Thought Leadership Institute from 2020 to 2021. Janet, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's a real pleasure. We're so happy to have you. So the podium is yours.
Thank you, Flavio, and thank you to all the volunteer leaders that made this evening happen. Our association is strong because of each one of you and the choice you make to contribute your gifts and to lead and to build community. I remember all the way back to the beginning of the ICF, and we were a small, mighty couple hundred. And to see us now well over 50,000 and operating on all 6 continents is such a joy. And I feel such privilege and honor to have the opportunity to spend this time together in it. ICW, which was just a twinkle in one of our fellow colleagues in Canada in her eye that, gee, we really should get together and celebrate and bring our clients. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit with you. And tonight we're going to talk about something that might challenge you. I know some of you are new to coaching. Some of you have been around coaching for a very long time. I see friendly faces and names on the list. And some of you might not be familiar with coaching at all, or you're a client of someone who is here. There's something for all of you. We're talking about the wholeness of humanity tonight. And I just invite you to relax into an open, curious stance. Allow yourselves to have a sense of wonder. What's new here? What's familiar? It's like, oh, I got that. Or, oh my gosh, what did she just say? All of that is welcome. Because of course, remember, we're in the business of being thought-provoking and creative so that we can inspire ourselves to maximize potential. You know, when I read those words the first time, I thought to myself, well, of course, that makes complete sense to me. And over the years, I've recognized it's not as simple as the words on the page. And I'm not sure I'll ever live long enough to fully maximize my potential. So rather than an outcome, I recognize it's a process. It's an experience of our lives, eyes wide open. Something that causes us to slow down, take a breath, sit still, pause, take another breath, listen a little more deeply. This is something that is so important. We've become, I don't know about you, but I certainly saw the transition during the COVID time of 2020 and 21, and even up to this point here in 2022, that we lost our way with boundaries. We're working back to back because we don't have to commute. Who put that schedule on my calendar? In other words, if you want to live a fully potent life, it requires catching up with yourself, taking a breath, allowing yourself to restore. We can't be in service to other people if we don't have a full gas tank. So part of what we're going to talk about tonight is why the word generativity is your superpower. What does generative mean? Some of you might even be thinking about regenerative already. Those of you that are working in the climate space as coaches, working with leaders to open their thinking. But we're going to start at the beginning of some of the discoveries for myself as a coach for all these years in lots of different sizes of organizations and cultures and contexts. There were some common patterns I recognized. And of course, our organization is called Invite Change because what I realized is that you can't force change. And you must accept that for some people, even the thought of change is paralyzing. So how do we as coaches put some fertilizer in the soil? How do we soften up the hard spaces that say no, never, to maybe, and from maybe to perhaps I could, and from perhaps I could to yes, I will, and all the way to I am. That's a description for you of what it means to be generative. We'll talk more about that tonight. We'll also likely challenge some things that you have as habits and preferences, assumptions, bias, ways of operating as a professional, as a leader, as a coach, that in your quiet moments, you're aware might not be as satisfying as you want them to be. That's a way of thinking about not living potent in your life. Potent being what's underneath the word potential. I call those things that are a little bit invisible. We don't talk about them with other people very often. Mental blinders. So think something over your eyes, mental blinders, and emotional barriers. We all have them. So I'm going to give you a way to recognize them in yourself, recognize them in your clients, and how to be with them in a way that is accepting and opens the door through curiosity and wonder to choose a new relationship with whatever it is that might be creating something that's limiting them. Anything that prevents us from seeing the world as it is, not our mind's eye version, but the reality that's right in front of us is worthy of our attention. We cannot solve problems if we cannot see clearly what's actually happening. So let's do a bit of a check-in. Where are we headed this evening? I'm going to go ahead and put the slides up. And thank you, Wang and Flavio, both for reminding everybody, please use the chat generously. What I know is that if you don't allow yourself to write something, you will be trying to remember it and you won't hear me speak. So I'd much rather you hear everything and just put it in the chat. I'll weave them in as I go. It does not feel disruptive at all to me. All right. Here's our learning outcomes for tonight. Need to get this chat pod out of the way. There we go. Discover the mental blinders and emotional barriers that sustain your personal status quo. the safe place, the comfortable place, the easy to follow the habit place. Because unless you can break out of that, you will prevent yourself from maximizing potential because you can't see it. Some of you might know Tim Galway. I would consider Tim one of our great leaders that launched coaching into the world. And he had a little formula: performance equals potential minus interference. Almost everything we do in coaching is about removing interference. We do that always in a client-centered way, helping the client to recognize their own blinders and barriers, which means, how do I restore my access to originating new ideas using my imagination? How do I break through my paralyzing fear and recognize that I am learning something as I'm experimenting and creating something meaningful and useful for myself so that I can make better decisions going forward in my life? All of this, of course, is about a body, heart, and head connection. How do we restore a better sense of resonance? We will look at all of these together, and you'll have an opportunity to do a little bit of a practice with each other tonight. All right, it's always useful to start with where it comes from. As I said, I'm not an academician. My coach always says to me, you have a PhD in life, Janet. I'm very happy with that, thank you. And I'm so grateful that there are people who do deep, rigorous research and help us to understand what's actually underneath the patterns of the human condition. I absolutely adore that work. And frankly, generative came out of my work with leaders around the world. And I saw these 4 capacities of being generative. I strive every day to live into being generative in every moment. And of course, we all fall asleep. So thank goodness there's coaches to help us pause, breathe deeply, reflect, think again, and see what's available when we're allowing ourselves all of these capacities: originate, create, learn, and produce results. And you see the authentic self in the center. I think one of the most terrifying and really exciting stages in my professional life was when I realized that I didn't have to follow the rules that anybody else set out for me. I got a little glimpse when I went away to college and I had my first job. But actually, when I got fired from my full commission sales job and realized that I had no idea how I was going to pay the rent, that was a moment when I realized, I must have more capacity than I'm using. That must not have been the right place for me. And it began what is continuing to today to be a discovery of who am I at the core of myself. So when I say authentic self, I don't mean that somebody else sees me as authentic. What I mean is that I see myself. I see my essential traits, the things that make me, me. And others might use the same words, they might use the same imagery, but because their worldview, their history, their culture, their philosophy, their anthropology, their geography, all of these things will make theirs unique from mine, because each one of us is a unique being. When we can come home to ourselves and source from the inside out the way we use our imagination and learn and create and produce, now we have the rich, diverse tapestry of humanity. But we must be able to see it. So what is the heart of generative coaching? Some of this will look familiar. A coach is a creative partner and a champion. And as you look down the list, you'll see some of the words of the ICF core competency model. I'm going to talk about what it means to have a generative mindset, not just a coaching mindset, that's important, but to go all the way to leaning into seeing those capacities in your clients and helping them to evoke their own awareness to it. Clearly, trust and safety is essential when we're talking about learning, growth, and change. And we know that it takes vulnerability to actually begin the learning journey. This is an important capacity as coaches. And ultimately, in step 7, I'm giving you an alternative way of thinking about evoking awareness. That we want to help clients understand from where inside of them does the way they see the world arise. Is it in their history? Is it in their preference? Is it in their bias? Do they even know what it is that's formed the mindset with which they see the world? So let's start there. Everything starts with mindset. Take a moment and just jot a note for yourself. What do you think mindset means? What is mindset? I'm going to give you another few seconds quietly here. Here's the way I frame mindset. This is a graphic and some words I share with every single client I work with. We talk about mindset and we talk about worldview at the beginning of every new relationship. And we come back to this over and over again, because of course, at the end of the day, to sustain whatever development occurs in our relationship, it happens because that individual has chosen to adopt a new mindset, frame of mind and attitude, thoughts and beliefs, habits and routine actions. These are all influencing how we show up and make decisions and interact with each other. I could stop right here and we could spend the rest of our time exploring all the ways in which you ask questions now, the way you notice and invite a client to name what is their frame of mind and attitude? What do they want it to become? These are all rich territory for evoking awareness. Oh, where did my mouse go? Let's see. Here we go. Okay. When you think about nature, what's the way in which nature is a teacher for you? I've given you some images on the right because what we know is that human beings are a reflection of nature. We're part of a big ecosystem. And if you look at the rings on the tree, you recognize that some of them are closer together and some of them are further apart. The two things a tree needs is light and water. And I want you to think about light and water as a metaphor for what we need. How do you expose yourselves to fresh light? Do you go outside and stand in the sun when it's shining? Do you allow yourself to just simply sit quietly and absorb it? What do you do to hydrate yourself? How do you allow for flexibility and fluidity in your way of being? Without restoring and attending to getting light and water, we crack, we're brittle. And there are lots of ways in which we recognize that. Unfortunately, we have a biology, a neurobiology that filters out things. And unfortunately, when we want to grow, those filters don't serve us. They keep us from seeing the reality in front of us. Some of you may know this phrase, the reticular activating system. It's in the oldest part of the brainstem, has a very important role to keep us safe. Only the problem is sometimes it's keeping us safe from something that isn't a threat. And you'll notice the last line here, duty clouds our choice to experience fully. This is happening because we get well rewarded externally for achieving, for contributing, for accomplishing. And we forget to see if that's true. Is it still true that the way I show up and the way I work will allow me to continue to achieve? Any of you that have ever lost a job or Maybe you've noticed that you've been unsatisfied in your work. Things have changed around you and you're still operating from the rearview mirror, something you knew and experienced before. So how do you know when those moments show up, what I call a plateau? Now, my passion for this has come out of the vision that Flavio shared with you, shaping a world where people love their life's work. I'm so blessed to get up every day and know that I don't have a job. I get to do my bliss every day. I can't imagine not being in this capacity in all the ways that I do it, whether I'm coaching or teaching or speaking or teaming or doing a volunteer initiative, whatever it might be. I get to walk in the world in this consciousness. Not everybody does, which is why I think coaching has unlimited opportunity for all of us. So in those moments when we're not feeling like we're all together, or our clients come to us, so you can just keep translating back and forth between your own experience and that of your clients. These are some clues to pay attention to, that not only are they unable to maximize potential, but they might not even be able to have a thought-provoking conversation, that they're in this mental blinder or emotional barrier that is important for us to surface so they can take some time to restore. In the body, self-sacrificing choices, addiction of any kind, quickly fatigued. If you're somebody who gets up in the morning ready to go and you're not doing that, I wonder what weight you're carrying around. Have you stopped to get quiet and ask the question? Poor sleeping, that's another one. In the heart, noticing that you have a doubting mind. Maybe you're a little annoyed, prickly, edgy. These are all possible adjectives. One we see a lot right now with clients because, of course, there are many sources of trauma right now. Sadness that just comes up and surprises us. And in the head, obsessively reinventing. It's not good enough. No, that's not going to work anymore. Not being able to think clearly. We're not as logical or objective or rational. And stalled decision-making. And feeling like all of a sudden nothing makes any sense and you don't know what to say yes or no to. So I'm going to stop here and be quiet for a moment to give you a chance to answer this question for yourself. I want you to do three things. Push your chair back a little bit from the computer and let yourself take a few deep breaths. Soften your eyes, close them if you're comfortable. And think about this question. What stops you each day to live fully potent? Listening in your head. And now open your eyes, pick up your pen and write down the first thing you heard inside your head. No censoring. Now, set down your pen. Soften your eyes again if that's comfortable. Breathe deeply, deeply into your body. Maybe even noticing if your shoulders are tense, let them relax. And now ask your body, what stops me each day to live fully potent? And when your body has answered, pick up your pen and add that to your piece of paper. All right, one more step. Set your pen down again. Push your chair back. Soften or close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths here. Sometimes it's a little harder to listen to the heart. We must get very quiet. Breathe all the way up to the top of your head. Hold it for just a second, and then exhale. 2 more times, and ask your heart, what stops you each day to live fully potent? And add to your paper. You'll want this information when we do the breakouts in a little bit. And you should have 3 things on the paper: how your head answered, how your body answered, and how your heart answered. Okay, now we're going to go into a rich bit of content. You will all have the slides available to you. And so don't try to take notes on this. Just let this move through you as you hear my voice and the translator's voice, and sense into which of these might be operating for you right now. In the first column are the mental blinders, the things in our head that are habits, that are preferences, that are assumptions, that might be bias, things that live in our heart, things that live in our body. Dualistic thinking, right, wrong, good, bad, either or. Comparison and competition is often what lives in the heart and blinds us, where we're always reaching for something outside of us to be better about or better than. Or from the head being an expert status. Oh my, I read the strangest thing yesterday. Stephen Covey has a new book, Trust and Inspire. And in that he writes, in 1982, human knowledge doubled every 12 years. Maybe it's 13 years. In 2022, researchers estimate that human knowledge doubles every 12 hours. That is profound. There's no way we can ever be an expert. And of course, Generation Z and Generation Alpha coming right behind them look at us and scratch their heads saying, well, why would we? I can find everything on my phone. So if we've been living a life that's defined based on what we identify as our expert status for knowledge, we will be, by definition, underperforming to potential. Now look on the other side. There's the emotional barriers. In our body, the way we create a barrier is to control. We want to control for extreme risk. Anything that would threaten what we love, anything that might result in a sense of loss or sacrifice, we will prevent ourselves from engaging in things that are that way. In our heart, we're looking for comfort in the familiar. We don't want to suffer. We want to stay safe. This is probably one of the most important reasons people do not change. And I'm going to translate the words down at the bottom. Fear will be familiar to you, but I want to give you Zig Ziglar's translation of fear, which is this: false evidence appearing real. In other words, our habits and preferences have us see the world in one way. However, the world is another way. We don't see the reality because of our blinders and barriers. So FOMO is the fear of missing out. Perhaps you hear comparison and competition in that. Phony is fear of not being important. It's a little bit of that expert status. And FOPO is fear of other people's opinions. And you can see that If we're feeling that we're being judged, it will often cause us to withdraw and not engage in life. So we might have some original thinking, but we're not going to share it with anybody because we're concerned about how they might perceive us. In Tim Galloway's language, he would say all of those are interference that are absolutely worthy for us as coaches to be spending some time with. All right, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm hoping we're going along and you're comfortable with what you've heard so far. Because what I'd like you to do now is to spend a bit of time in your breakout rooms. Let's see, did I want to do this? Nope, I don't want to do that just yet. Okay, we're going to go into breakout rooms. I'm looking at our numbers here. You're going to be in pairs together. And what I'd like you to do in pairs, step one is for you to say your name and identify what you think your top value is. What do you think your top value is? The second thing is identify who's going to share first. You'll each have 10 minutes to share. You're going to answer the 3 questions out loud to your partner. What stops you each day to live fully potent? From your body, from your heart, and from your head. Let's see if that'll do it. Hang on, I got to do some math. 74. Are Wang and Flavio, are you going to play in breakout rooms?
No, I'm not.
No? Okay.
We stay
I
here.
am. This is the fun part.
All right. Well, I'll make enough room so that you all can. And if you don't want to go, just don't go. And okay. I will move people around to help them so that everybody has a partner. Okay. So you will have shared your answers, your 3 answers to the question, and then have a conversation, a coaching conversation with your partner. What do you know about those 3 answers? What insights have bubbled up? What is it informing you about what might be keeping you from living potent that you might want to bring to a coach? How might that alter your sense of satisfaction in your life? I'm just giving you some examples. No rules here. Don't make this a formal coaching session, but make it an opportunity for you to evoke some awareness from the first right answer that you gave to the question. And then select a trait, some trait that you think is the most important one, either a mental blinder or an emotional barrier. What was the important one that, you know, gosh, if I could give attention to that, I think a breakthrough might happen for me. So name, top value, figure out who's going first, share your 3 answers, have a conversation, identify what you think the top one to focus on for you to have a breakthrough would be, and then switch. At 10 minutes, I'll send a broadcast note to you to say, time to be switching. All right. If there are questions, go ahead and put it in the chat for me. And if not, the rooms are open. You can go ahead and join each other. And I see I have some folks to move around here. Okay. Claudio, let's move you. Andrea, let's move you. All right, Flavio, I'm going to move you to 25. Luciana, let's see. Yeah, those are all going along just fine.
Janet, Petrina, in room 23, she's asking for help. What do you want me to do?
Find out what help she wants.
So I will join her and then I come back.
Okay. And welcome back, everybody. Some of you had a delicious time in your pair, and some of you were in more than one room. And some of you had different languages and couldn't understand each other. And Wang and I were chatting about how much it happens that even when we speak the same language, we don't understand each other. And I wonder if some of you didn't have the experience of recognizing your discomfort and then being able to lighten it with a sense of humor about it and come and ask for help. Or maybe some of you didn't ask for help and you did this. Whatever you did, you did. And what does it show you? What does it surface for you? This is the reason we do exercises. It's not the exercise itself, it's what we learn about ourselves when we have an opportunity to be in our own process. So I want to share a little bit, and then I'll open the floor for you to use chat again to share some thoughts about what your experience was. And the reason I'm bringing this slide up here is to say, if we're to really achieve our destiny as human beings, we must accept responsibility to find the breakthrough. Whether the breakthrough is our comfort zone that no longer feels satisfying, or the breakthrough is I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm unsettled, I'm suffering, and make a different choice. When we're as coaches working with a client who might be in either one of those conditions or any combination of, it's important to remember that fighting against a plateau just extends it. This is a chronic back pain, and you don't go see a doctor about it. You're essentially perpetuating the chronic back pain. So you don't need to fight against it. You must notice what your body is saying to you. And in our heart, plateaus are normal. You know, I've worked with lots of couples over the years who, as their children have gone off to college, they look at each other and say, why are we together? And some of them decide not to stay together, but they realize that, this is a moment of plateau. The job we had as parents has moved to a new phase. It's time for our children to find their way in the world, and it's time for us to find our next evolution. But that requires opening their eyes, seeing the world as it is, and recognizing responsibility to make a new choice of how they relate to the conditions of their lives, as it's always changing. And of course, awareness is never a habit, never a habit. It's a practice. It's one we must be deliberate about over and over and over again. Every single time I find myself unsatisfied with something, I can almost every time identify that I fell asleep, that I'd gotten comfortable with one process and routine and missed, something has changed here and I wasn't paying attention. And of course, that breakdown is a source of something new for me to pursue, because it's revealing that I wasn't paying attention, not as a good or a bad, a right or a wrong, just what is. And I have an opportunity to say, what do I want now? You probably, those of you who are coaches here, have seen this on the internet. You know, what's your favorite coaching question? And almost always, hands down, the one most popular is, what do you want? Only when you ask yourself that question, is it very easy to answer? No, because we don't take enough time to slow down, to get quiet, to listen deeply to the body, the heart, and the head, and find out what are the answers that matter for us. So let me pause for a minute and give you a chance to work in the chat pod. I'm bringing us back to the definition of generative and giving you a little more insight to what you did in the exercise. When we are constructing new answers, we're in the imagination, we're originating new thinking, we're creating something practical, tangible, and relevant for us. When we are in the learning capacity, we're deconstructing, we're being an observer of what's going on and realizing, oh, that's what motivated that choice or decision I made. It wasn't really good for me. What was motivating that choice? This is the Evoke Awareness for a client about how did they find themselves in the place they're in. Yes, they don't like it, but if they don't understand how they got there, in other words, awareness, being alert, they can't make a different choice to construct a different belief or a different value to align with. And that's the reconstruction process. Remember step 7 in the heart of generative coaching, it's practice awareness, clarity, alignment, noticing what isn't satisfying, what feels like a plateau, getting clear about how did I get here? What was I believing? What was motivating the way I experienced this? And ultimately, if I'm going to make a new choice, what's the value that matters most? What's the principle I want to follow? How am I making meaning of my current condition? And what choice of relationship now guides the actions I take next to produce something different? We're always in a constant space of being generative, constructing, deconstructing, and reconstructing. All right, I promised I'd pause. Let's see what's in the chat pod. And comments, questions from your breakout room experience, from what you've seen so far.
Janet, I see this is Flavio. I see this as a kind of a spiral growth, a helix where you're changing all the time, and at each turn you start to see the world, so to speak, or see yourself in a new way. There is a say that says, we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And any comment on this? This is a continuous learning. Could you expand that a little?
There's no question about what it is, a continuous learning. And that's why I use the word dynamic capacities. If we can give ourselves permission to soften the desire to have everything just right, to understand how it all works, like, oh, now I get it, I can be successful. And replace that with, I'm not likely to ever get it all the way. Instead, I'm going to let myself have some wonder about, oh, look at that. That's a new idea. Oh, I learned something there. Oh, let me play with that. Let me create something. Let me pay attention and see what happens. This is what's happening underneath with our clients all the time. They've come to us because there's something they're seeking. It's right on the edge of their awareness. They can't quite grab it or understand it, or something jarring has happened and it doesn't match up with the way they like to have their life go. In the coaching partnership, they have an opportunity to slow down and take a moment to reflect. Gosh, what happened here? What were the choices I made that produced that result? What was the assumption of what I thought was the basis for that decision? What value did I align it with? What was motivating me to make that the most important thing? Because now I can see there was a whole bunch else going on. More to the story, more things involved that I dismissed or deflected or just simply ignored. So it is a continuous spiral, Flavio. I think that's a fine metaphor. And the minute we've done our reflective work, we can step back forward and say, aha, now that I see that's what was operating, what would be a new belief for me to adopt that would be more respectful of who I've become. I'll give you an example. My father told me when I was a young woman that if I worked harder than anybody else, I would always make my way in the world, in the professional realm. Well, I did work harder than anybody else. I managed to get plenty of promotions, but I never got a raise. And at one point, they had to get a board exception to raise my salary to the minimum. And I'd been in the role for several years. The thing my dad didn't tell me was, and you need to be able to stand for your results and ask to be paid for them. I never heard that part. And it never occurred to me that that's what people did. I never looked. I never asked. I never noticed. And this goes on all day long for all of us. We have early imprinting, and until something jars us awake, we don't realize that we're operating out of habit and preference and assumption and bias. This is our work, to shake up the rubric, the way people make sense of their worlds, the way they relate to their worlds, and then give them an opportunity in the safety of our partnership to construct something new and to do it there, to originate the vision of it, to see how it might play out in different parts of their lives, to notice, oh, I have more capacity today than I did 10 years ago. I can lean into that as I make decisions. But to do that with us before they're ready to do it out there. And then, how do I construct the way I will do it out there? You know, I think that right now, we have a lot of people who are having a very hard time just putting one foot in front of the other. There's a low-grade trauma that all of us are at the influence of. We need to slow down. We need to make space for people to connect with themselves and take some inventory. Who have I become? Who am I today? I'm not defined by all the difficulty in the world. I'm so much more than that. Our core principle, that we accept each other as already whole, resourceful, capable, creative, so much more than any circumstance. The breath we take in that declaration means we've started the generative process. We're already originating a new relationship to our lives. I think that's our greatest gift and contribution. It's our value. We cannot do that alone. When we do that in partnership with a coach, it restores real hope. And so I think your question is well placed. And this is perhaps an invitation for all of you to not take what we've been exploring tonight as the way to go. There is no one way other than the one that brings us to a place of deep discovery. Wonderful, Maria Angelica. I've discovered there is a world that I was not seeing. I'm grateful for that now. I can tell you early on in my career, I wasn't so sure. Interesting and inspiring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Katrina. I'm just scanning here. Yes, Diane, we have moments in our lives when every single area is operating. And the key question then is, how did that happen? Like, what did I tolerate? What did I choose to allow to populate my decisions? Mostly out of an unconscious stance instead of a deliberate stance. The fact that it's there, hallelujah, you see it. And now the real work begins to say, how do I deconstruct? Oftentimes what happens when people come to coaching is they end up negotiating all of their key life relationships because they realize they're ready for something different. And all those relationships are going to change. So how will I think about that? What's the respectful way to think about that? What are the values that I cherish now? It's not so much that our values change, but their priorities move as we grow and mature in making room for that. Yes, we are eternal beings under construction. Yes. You know, imposter syndrome is a wonderful thing to think a bit about more deeply. How did we decide that that was an okay thing to claim? What is it that we're paying attention to or prioritizing when we evoke inside of ourselves the belief that we are an imposter? We're not as good as other people think we are. Do you hear the fear of other people's opinion piece coming up here? How do we come to peace and acceptance that we are who we are, and it's magnificent and a miracle that we're even alive? That we are alive means we have the opportunity to imagine our lives, to create that, to accept that we aren't always going to get it right, whatever right means, which is always a moving target, and take a step and take another step. Those of you that have children, remember that they went from crawling to hanging on to the chair or the table or your leg to learn how to walk. And they fell down a few times. Ancient Asian proverb, fall down 7, get up 8. Everything we've ever learned in life, we've learned through falling down and getting back up. Generative is all about that. It's not about not falling down. How would I ever understand what it would mean to stand differently? All right, I'm just scanning here to see if there are some other questions. Thank you for all the reflections.
What the one thing that I think is valuable, Janet, is that you just mentioned the imposter syndrome, is that sometimes we do not allow ourselves to perform below what was expected, and we cannot perform above expectations all the time permanently. So it's the difference between I am an imposter to, well, this was a bad day, or something like that. There's a world between I am an imposter or and this was a bad day, and I will not kill myself or hurt myself because of that, or feel better or too bad about that.
Right. So when we say I am, we're producing an identity.
Yep.
We're defining ourselves with whatever you fill in the blank with after I am. And the question is that true? Is it true? What's the evidence that it's true? Where does my head and my heart and my gut tell me that's what's accurately happening? And as we keep asking the question, we realize, according to whose expectation? Is it my boss's expectation? Is it my partner's expectation? Is it my kid's expectation? Well, if all of those are answered yes, then when did I decide to be powerless and do things that have me suffer? This is the exploration process. And again, why trust and safety is so central to the core work that we do in coaching that allows the person to say, this doesn't feel good and I don't want to do it anymore, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to replace it with. All right, well, that's the first step, that you have a thought that you might want to replace it. Let's see where that comes from. If we stay with the identity, we're essentially saying we're powerless to have choice in our lives. And we know that's not true. Every day, every breath we take, the clothes we put on, the food that we eat, all the basic necessities that are essential to life is choice after choice after choice after choice. That's like it's a choice to believe we're an imposter. So we have to separate. We can't conflate the two things. And to recognize we are whole, capable of anything. We may not be choosing to be capable, but the truth is we are. So wherever that gap is, that's our work, to evoke awareness of the belief system that's operating that might, and more often than not, is out of date. We have capacity we are not tapping into. I often say, I wish we'd add 2 more words to the definition. We should say realize and maximize potential. You can't maximize what you haven't figured out you have. So I think your point is well made, that when we identify with the weakness, we're essentially setting down, as my husband says, setting down the tool bag. And instead of examining, is there a different tool I want to take out of the tool bag, to remember that I'm actually in charge of my life experience. And I think in some ways you're actually speaking to something I wanted to close with here. So let me give you a few thoughts here. When we say, oh, well, that's the, and fill in the blank, that's the imposter syndrome, or that's the I'm not good enough belief, or that's the shadow that I'm not worthy. Fill it in any way you want. That's a bit of generalizing. And what I'm encouraging you to look at is, how do we personalize it? If we can help a client and ourselves face the patterns of being, what's actually happening in my life with a beginner's mind, then I begin to realize, oh, it's in front of me. It's out the front windshield. I can't do anything about the rearview mirror. It happened. And oh, by the way, it might have developed something quite remarkable in me that I'm not deploying with this new situation I find myself in. Act by experimenting and engaging from insight versus intellect. So it's the reason I had you slow down and close your eyes and ask within. This is the same thing we do with clients, giving them a quieter space to breathe and hear what their being is saying to them. That's insight, not intellect. We don't grow from books. It does help us get stimulated. It's part of the process, perhaps, for those who enjoy that, but it's not the only thing. And of course, this requires a deep honesty to believe that there's always more than now. And I think this is how, as coaches, we restore what's called, there it is, real hope. If you all haven't picked up this book, it's really quite a delight. Jane Goodall, some of you may know, is the anthropologist who brought us in great joy and tears the same in her study of chimpanzees. And this is called The Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times. And I know there are many who think the world has lost hope, or that hope is a fantasy, or as she says here, that it's passive wishful thinking. But I think we know differently as coaches. I think we understand that the opposite is what's true, that real hope requires action and engagement. And doing that at home with ourselves, from the center, from our authenticity, from that resourceful, capable, creative, artesian well that is every one of us as a living, breathing human being on the planet. And when we're able to connect that deep knowing interiorly, it will be right action, because it's right as defined by me, not as defined by somebody else. So that's what I wanted to leave you with. There are some other things in the slide deck. I've given you a link to a TED Talk I just did on the difference between judgment and being judgmental, which fits very nicely with what we've done today. And I know that the chapter is going to make, that sounds funny, doesn't it? The chapter is going to make a chapter available. Chapter 6 out of the book, Invite Change. It's in English, but maybe somebody enterprising in the chapter will translate it for you all into Portuguese. Maybe my friend Marcus Baptiste could be talked into doing that. And there is a wonderful YouTube channel available, lots of free resources. Hey, Marcus, good to see you. And what else? Oh, Flavio, you asked about advanced courses. Of course, there's lots available at Invite Change. We don't ever sit still. By the way, don't think there's anything new on the planet, which is why I'm very generous and give things away. If you've learned something today, let people know you learned it from me and Invite Change, but use everything that you found useful tonight. And I'm wishing you a fine, safe and enlivening International Coaching Week and the rest of your year ahead.
Thank you very much, Janet. You mentioned, I think we should tell everyone that the chapter 6 of your book, will be sent out to people that are registered for this event. Janet, thank you very much. There are lots of praising in the chat, people acknowledging that they gain very significant or very important insights for them. And I think this is the value of being here. So thank you very much. Don't know if someone else would like to has a question, would like to say something. This is a wonderful opportunity. If not, back to my dear friend Wang for our goodbye.
Hi, everyone. Just to make sure, the file that Janet was referring, we put the link in the chat. If you have missed it, you can reach out asking for the link so that we can send you the file, because it's really an interesting chapter about her book, and it's the same thing about what we were talking about here in this this event. Okay, and please take the note that we put the link for the certificate and CCUs. So you have to fill the form to have that, okay? Do I miss something? Anna, Marcia? I think that it's all. Oh, please remember that we have a lot of programations until the Friday, and some of them are in English. So please welcome to follow our social media in ICF Brazil, and take a look in all the schedule that we have ahead. And thank you from bottom heart for all you here. Please, back to you, Flav.
I would just say that some of you didn't hear Janet's voice. It was Gustavo's, our translator. So Gustavo, thank you very much for, I didn't hear you, but I tend to believe it was a great work again. Thank you very much. So people, if you haven't had your dinner, it's time. If you had dinner, maybe a snack now. Have a great evening, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, Janet.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.